we are thinking about and talking ad nauseum about the Stars and Stripes, the U.S. men's national team that has felt as though they have lived in a state of complete and utter chaos for a long while. Certainly it has not been rosy, sunshine and rainbows under Mauricio Pochettino. They limped into the Gold Cup and then they smacked Trinidad and Tobago by 5-0. It was exactly the result, exactly the performance that they needed to maybe not silence, but turn the volume down on some of that constant negativity. And unfortunately for Trinidad and Tobago and CPLer Stefan Yates and Andre Rampersad, well, it just came at the right time, and that typically seems to be the way it goes for TNT. How much does that actually do, Ollie, to change the perception or the framing of the American media, the American supporters, and really the Concacaf world at large when we discuss this American men's national team?
Nothing. Like, I don't want to, I'm not saying that's fair, but I think it's the reality. I do think there's maybe an opportunity here at this Gold Cup. And I think we've seen this with Canada once or twice, where some of the big names are away, some different players get an opportunity, and maybe you capture a bit of enthusiasm around just a different set of faces, some younger players, some players who are, really desperate to impress and wanting to show their best if they haven't had as much experience with a national team. And that can maybe change the narrative a little bit in the way it's been around US players not wanting to be there or not showing enough passion and fire to play for the jersey when they are there. I think you'll probably get that from this group, and maybe that can start to, raise a few spirits a little bit.
Wheels, has the media been too harsh? Are we scathing? Are we unfair to the Americans?
Don't include me in this. It's like it's mostly the American media on the American national team. And no, when you're the United States and having a level of success before and have some really good players playing at top clubs around the world, and the players are compensated the way that they are, and the money that's flowed into the U.S. program in terms of developing players and allowing these players to have a platform to go on and achieve something. No, they're not being too hard on this group. Well, when was their last marquee or notable victory that they had? I'm serious. Was that the World Cup?
World Cup,
beating Iran. Like I'm going back that far, and since that time, it's been an unmitigated disaster. It's like a player and his family going after the head coach, and then the manager of the national team in limbo. He's in, he's out. They've just completely waffled. I think that players, because of the lack of leadership within the U.S. Soccer Federation, have then kind of lost interest. They certainly have lost their identity. They land on another high-priced manager, Mauricio Pochettino. Mopo, a great club manager. Is he suited for international football? Most recently, they lose 2 games in a row. 3 straight tournaments, Gold Cup, Nations League, Copa America, failure. No, they're not. No one's being too hard on this group. In fact, I think it's embarrassing the position that they find themselves in. Now, where things get chaotic is the finger pointing. The fact that former players and media members all have their own take, which absolutely they're afforded that opportunity to share it, but then players are going on television and podcasts to go and have their say on the state of things and why they're not there, and what it's just completely chaotic. Someone needs to get a hold of this program and have everyone once again marching in the same direction, because just like the state of affairs in the United States right now, it's chaos. And simply put, that's not a recipe for any kind of success.
We're not unfamiliar being up here in Canada to American sensationalism, from our media to our news, in a lot of ways, our politics, certainly sports. There's an intertwined connection to our neighbors to the south. So hearing about them all the time, when it's high, it's high. They're world beaters, unstoppable, the best program to ever exist in the history of football. When it's low, it's like this. Mopo, should he be sacked this early? Garrett, does any of it matter? This American men's national team is going to be judged on what happens at the 2026 World Cup. Is this just noise, or is there some merit to the criticism for a team that's not necessarily puffing their chest and earning it as they march towards 2026?
This tournament matters for one person in particular, and that's the manager, Mauricio Pochettino. He needs to prove, playing with this team that looks more like a second side with a couple first-team footballers, sprinkled in as well, including Chris Richards, very good player. But he needs to prove that there's a direction, there's an identity. He can have these players playing with one another, and they can achieve through playing, through all the noise that's surrounding this team. Look, like the noise, the talk about this team, it's only going to get louder in the build-up to a World Cup. Right now, there's a malaise because largely the U.S. population in terms of football, they like winners on the field, and this team isn't winning. They also really like players that are fun to watch and who are committed to fighting for the badge or the flag, and these players just don't resemble that. So there's something to be gained from the players that are playing in this tournament on the field to make a name for themselves, show that they give a damn and show that they fit. But really, this Gold Cup is really a referendum on whether Mauricio Pochettino is the best man to lead this team into the 2026 home World Cup or not.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, going back to the previous question as well, whether you think the noise is fair or unfair is irrelevant. It exists, and I would personally make the case that they've caused a lot of their own problems in that regard, and they do deserve a lot of the criticism they get, but it doesn't matter. It's the reality, and it reminds me a lot of England's. It's a country that has very high expectations around this team. There's a lot of people talking about the team, and always going to be a lot of scrutiny and attention on it, and you have to deal with it. And if you don't, it can really derail your efforts at a major tournament, because it is a lot of pressure to play under, and it can become very unpleasant. So you can either feel sorry for yourself and say we're getting treated unfairly and there's all this noise around us and people criticizing us, or you can try to build bridges with the people who are making that noise and fix it. And that might mean holding your nose at times and kind of building those bridges towards people that you don't particularly like them or what they're saying. But no one else is going to do that for you. You have to improve the relationship between the team and the media and the public. And right now, it's in a disastrous place, and it's in that place because of a series of PR blunders that they've made.
Right. It's also the excitability of the American public wanting or craving a true superstar,
it can
a star player, and they build up. And this isn't just the media here. These players are signing off on documentaries about their lives. There's individuals saying that Christian Pulisic is the next Messi or Ronaldo, and it's nonsense. This team, he's a fine player. There is some very good players across this U.S. team, but they lack true superstars. The best version of the United States, and we've seen this over the years, is with some very good players, but a team playing together with a collective identity. I would argue punching above their weight, not based upon what they're paid and the money that goes into the program, based upon the quality of players available. So they need to get back to basics here. It's going to be a sum of all the parts that's going to determine where, how far the U.S. goes, not one individual player. That's just not the reality for them.
Fair or unfair, there's always a direct comparison. Canada and the USA, for some of the reasons we've already outlined, but also when it seems as though both nations aren't typically on that same top tier at the same time very often. It's always dueling who's number one, who are the kings of Concacaf, et cetera, et cetera. And we're a large part of that to blame because it's comparison. Who's the best? And as Canadians, you want to see Canada do it. But it's very interesting, I guess, to put it, and maybe I'm downplaying a little bit, to compare Jesse Marsch and Mauricio Pochettino right now, and at least the way they are managing their nations. Jesse Marsch has said, he's been very adamant, look, I didn't really have to try to sweet talk or barter or convince a lot of my players to come play in the Gold Cup. They want to win it. And that could be shocking to a lot of people outside of the inner circle that knows the personalities of this team. Joe David, if his contract's not signed and he gets hurt, it's a risk he's taking, but he wants to, and he's going to wear the captain's armband in this Gold Cup for a reason. Gareth mentions it at frequent opportunities because it's true. Canada wins the Canadian Shield, and the players are running laps after the full-time whistle and the Canadian Shield is raised. There's just a different mentality right now. And Ollie, I'm wondering if you think maybe it was a mistake for Pochettino to not maybe dig his heels in a little bit more and say, look, if you want to be a part of this team or face of this nation, you will play for the Gold Cup this year, certainly with all the negativity right now.
I don't necessarily think so, but I think you have to handle it differently than the way they did. And this is another one where, for me, it's just a head scratcher as to why they let it get out of control this way, where you have Christian Pulisic coming on podcasts to like defend himself. Like, what are we doing there? You can compare two situations, for example, like a lot of the ex-players criticize, they're not playing in the Gold Cup. They should be more committed to their country. With respect, some of those guys never played anywhere near as many club games as they do now, right? Like, I think it's understandable that for some of these players, it's becoming too much. They're banged up. They need a break at some point in the year. But how do you then kind of message that if you're the federation? Because what Canada did with Moise Bombito was they said, he wants to play. He wants to be here. We're telling him, take a break, get yourself ready for the new season with Nice. You've got early Champions League qualifiers. We're making that decision for you. With the US, it's been the opposite. It's been, well, we wanted Pulisic here for the whole thing. He only wanted to be here for 2 games. It's putting it all on him when it might be really kind of legitimate that at this point he did finish the season with minor injuries, banged up, and needed the break. But it's just different ways in which it's presented that I think creates these problems that they're having now, where, again, you've got the player like going on these random shows trying to defend himself from criticism from here, there, and everywhere that he shouldn't be doing. That shouldn't be his role, his responsibility to have to do that. It's been mishandled by his federation, I think.
Yeah, and
you agree, Gareth?
I'm not in the camp that it's a great idea for every player to go play in the Gold Cup this time around because of the fixture buildup. Some of these players legitimately need rest, and the proof will be in the pudding in a year's time, whether playing in this tournament was beneficial for these players or not. For some of them, yeah, there's certain players that are going to be fighting to be part of a 23-man squad and want to be part of a winning team. And that's kind of why it matters a little bit more to Canada, because there are very few sacred cows or players that, are a firm lock just in terms of their inclusion. I think that they believe that there's going to be players in positions that are going to be up for grabs. But for a lot of these U.S. players, I understand why they're stepping away. But Oliver's right. It's like the way that the situation's being handled. And by the way, just because Jesse Marsh comes out and says that every player wanted, none of us know what Marsh has said to these players. Like we exactly. Don't.
It doesn't matter though.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But the one thing that was really weird, and I'm not sure if he's going to be in Vancouver on Tuesday night or not, but the one player he did mention publicly was Alphonso Davies, a player that's out through injury, inviting him to be part of the Canadian setup. And, is the captain of the team going to be there? That was the one weird one from Marsh. I'm not sure why he took that time to make that public sentiment known, because when a player's recovering, for me, he should stay away and take care of himself and do what he needs to do to put himself and his body and his mind in the best place possible. Davies doesn't have to be here for this tournament, but Marsh brought it up, and now it kind of makes it we love him to be here. I've kept the invitation, kept the door open to Alphonso Davies, but it's up to him. Being married, what that kind of line of conversation, how that works. It's like, yeah, I would love for you to come to the grocery store with me today, but you do what's best for you. Like, come on now. It's a leading line of conversation here. So we're not sure what's being said. Pochettino knows the importance of club football and what's in the best interest for these players as well. So I think that it's a case-by-case situation. I'm not going to knock some of these players for wanting to take this tournament off, because quite frankly, every other version of this tournament, in every other previous edition over the last decade or so, best players haven't been coming. Look at Canada's squad in 2023 in this tournament and beyond that, okay? So star players regularly set out this tournament, so I'm not going to change my tune just because we're a year out from the World Cup, because there's a lot more football to be played over the next 365 days.
Okay, lastly today, looking ahead a little bit, the Americans beat Trinidad and Tobago by 5-0 to open up Group D play in San Jose. Saudi Arabia in that group as well with Haiti. They won by 1-0, and Saudi Arabia is who's next up for the U.S. on the 19th. That's Thursday. That match will be played in Austin. That's the group, Ollie, and the Americans, they're comfortably in front right now. They would be expected to win that group comfortably, but as we've discussed, it doesn't really matter until the knockouts, until the last 2 matches, quite frankly. If they don't do this, and by this I mean make the final, probably win it. That's the expectation that they'll saddle themselves with as well. Does the U.S. Soccer Federation genuinely consider a coaching change and sacking Mauricio Pochettino?
I don't think so. What are you going to do 1 year out? Like, who's the replacement?
Give Greg Berhalter a call.
Well, they've got themselves, they wasted a year in my view. And again, when you talk about the, repeated missteps of this federation, Berhalter never should have been back after the Rayner thing, not because of blame or culpability, but just because it was untenable with the nature of that story. They wait several months, then he's back, then he's out after a bad Copa America. I think it would be pretty ridiculous to make a change right now. Will Pochettino work out? That remains to be determined. But making a change 1 year before the World Cup would be absolute panic stations.
Does it even matter if it's the final? Like, if it's worse, if they get to the knockout round, of course they're going to get to the knockout round. But if they lose that first game, is that worse? Is that different than them not making the final or winning it?
No, I think that the sentiment will be that there needs to be confidence in the way that they play, and for the United States, that means winning. Why let this charade continue on if you know that he's not the right man? Because they are at panic stations. Like, there is panic. Like, this is about America hosting a World Cup with a team that they believe should be able to compete. This is panic mode right now. So I think that anything is on the table. The problem is, this is a federation that spends more than anyone else paying their players. Like, it's crazy how much they pay them. And some of the way that they splash cash around, I just don't know if it's financially feasible to go on and sack another manager, especially on Pochettino, a man that's on the number that he is. Probably behind the doors, behind closed scenes, they were hoping that Spurs didn't go down the Thomas Frank route and decided, maybe Pochettino could be a decent enough selection and get him out of that contract, because I just think it's prohibitive at this point. It just depends how much they're going to panic. I think that all cards are on the table, but swallowing that pill of what Pochettino would take to pay him off to go away, and then what it would take to bring in a tournament specialist, someone who can come in for 9 months and just try to get the most out of this team in order for them to perform next summer. It could be in the cards. I think that it's 60-40 that Pochettino stays, but that can change really quickly.
Well, let's pick this conversation up again later in July. For now, we'll say goodbye. This has been OneSoccer Direct. Our coverage of the 2025 Concacaf Gold Cup will continue right here on OneSoccer.